Hello and welcome for the first time to running Rise of the Runelords. I didn't actually think of a name for this bit, but since, as you might know, our third action run-through of Rise of the Runelords has finally reached its conclusion, I figured I'd go back through the entire adventure and kind of talk about what it's like to run the game, and what all I do to prepare for games, to run adventure paths in general, and that sort of thing. Today I'm just going to talk about Book 1, well, some overview stuff, and then I'll go through Book 1. People are here in chat, watching live to ask me questions, or make me laugh. And yeah, I don't know. Do I have a favorite book of Rise of the Runelords? Joey Sucks asks. That's a good question. I'm so fond of all of them to an extent. I think... What is actually my favorite book? I like parts from all of the different books. I think my favorite scene to run... What is my favorite scene to run? I really like Book 1. I think Book 1's a very strong introduction book. Even though it doesn't tie in super well with the plot of the kind of adventure overall. Maybe Hook Mountain Massacre, Book 3. That might actually be my favorite just across the board. I think Lucretia is a fun villain. I like the kind of setup of trying to storm Fort Rannoch, and take back the base of the Black Arrows. I like all the dealings with the Fae, the assault on Barl Breakbones, and I like the big kind of set piece fight with Black Maga at the end. I think that's all. Yeah, I think that's maybe my favorite overall. Oh yes, the Grawl Farm is also pretty hilarious. It's maybe like my weakest part of the book personally, but I still like it. Yes, you do still have to go back and fight the Scorpion and Wet Papa Groswell. Yes, that's correct. Well, you know what? I think I don't have the chat in here on the video, but I'm just going to try and read the messages as they come. So, sure. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and switch. I've got a slideshow prepared, you guys. I'm not a good video editor, so I didn't want to do any kind of fancy editing, so I'm a programmer at heart, so I know how to do slideshows, and that's kind of it. So here you go. Here we have the cover of Rise of the Runelords, or a section of it, with Karzug's very tensed face. I don't know where this fight's supposed to happen. There's like all the pillars around him that I think maybe were supposed to be the pillars of gold, like molten lava in the Eye of Avarice, but this scene as it occurs never really happens. So shrug. This kind of happens a lot if you're new to running Paizo adventure paths, this sort of thing happens quite frequently where the art doesn't 100% line up with the text of the book, so you just kind of have to deal with it, I suppose. But okay, let's go ahead and get started. So first book of the series is Burnt Offerings. There's 6 books in total, if you did not know. This book encompasses basically everything from the party arriving at Sandpoint and going to the Swallowtail Festival to dealing with Nuwalia and her sinister gang of ne'er-do-wells. It kind of stops just short of after they return to Sandpoint, the party then has to deal with the Skinsaw Man and his appearance. But this book 1 is all contained to everything before that. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the stuff that I have in my GM's toolbox. Other people might have these things as well. These are just things I recommend. And I guess first up, it actually really depends on how I'm playing. So there's kind of 3 modes of play that I've generally used. First one, playing in person. I like it. I miss it a lot. What I try to do if you're playing at the table with me, I try to make sure everybody has a rule book. I've found that is at least a core rule book, or the whatever books each individual person needs. At least the core book, I think, is important, just so that people can kind of look up rules on the fly. For maps and minis, I like to use the Chessex mats. They're simple. Wet erase works well. For occasional maps, I know Paizo makes some battle maps. They're kind of plasticky. I don't like how they fold. They leave big creases. You can certainly... There's ways to kind of iron them out, but then you have to keep them all flat in storage, and I don't like those as much. I use them more for Starfinder, since that's kind of... since I don't know, the Starfinder maps are a lot nicer to me personally, but yeah, I think I mostly use the Chessex maps occasionally for like a big sandpoint encounter or something similar, or certain dungeons. I would go off to FedEx and get a big printout instead, or tape a couple of printouts together. That can work. I also like doing Dwarven Forge maps or crafted maps. Those I try to save. Well, Dwarven Forge, really expensive. Also takes up a shitload of space, so somewhat regret all of the random Dwarven Forge pieces I have lying around, but especially since I haven't been able to play live in a long time. But they are very cool if you can afford them. Outside of that, I do like making maps. Crafting them out of cardboard and shit is fun. Going to a Michael's or Joanne's and assembling things for like a big pirate ship or a concert stage can be very fun. Yeah, I would save that for big set piece encounters though. Ooh, Wise Wolf of Yoitsu suggests using the plexiglass over the folded maps. Ah, I haven't tried that. I do not have any panes of plexiglass lying around, but maybe I'll try that in the future. Yeah, I've generally, though, found that just using the Chessex map works fine. I've gone from small ones to increasingly larger sizes, so now I've got the kind of comically large ones, and I've got multiples of them because I inevitably forget to erase them, and they'll get some amount of burn-in. But as long as you take care of your Chessex map, it's usually fine. I like the Chessex mats as well they're good for improvising. I do a lot of very kind of last-minute prep for stuff, and I like to be able to change things on the fly if the party does something weird. I also like to, when you're playing in person, I think it's really, I mean, online too, I think it's important to have mood music. I personally like to grab stuff from video games because those tend to have really good kind of extended loops that you can use and people won't notice. I really try to avoid songs that have lyrics because I think people find it very distracting and can't focus. Another point, this kind of applies to all styles of running games, but try to read the room, or always be reading the room. Try to pay attention to what every single one of your players is doing at any given moment. This is much harder to do when you play online, especially if you're not using video. But I try to make a habit of every once in a while just kind of looking at or thinking about what each of my players and their characters are doing. Because it's important to make sure everybody at the table is having fun. As the GM, you are sort of the host of the situation, and it's your job to make sure that people aren't getting too distracted or getting too bored or running off the... it's your job to sort of wrangle everyone together, so it pays to sort of make sure that you're keeping an eye on everybody. I think it's really easy for one or two players to kind of get left behind. Especially if one or two players are just talking a bunch and taking up a lot of space. Oh, do I have the 8.5 foot mat yet? No, I do not have the 8.5 foot Chessex mat yet. That might have come out since I've switched to primarily online, but I may in fact want one. And then the other thing I note about playing offline is I prefer to play deviceless. I know a lot of people don't like to do that, but where you can, I think it's best to try and unplug a bit at the table. People having their phones for emergencies is good, but it really does detract if everybody is on their phones, even if they're using their phones for their character sheets or whatever. I find it's really easy for people to start looking at Twitter or browse the web or Reddit or what have you. So I prefer everybody just put your devices under the table. Let's sit down and play a game together. It's even with the sort of added complexity of using physical sheets, I think it's just more fun that way. Even if you're killing trees. I've just generally found that the games play faster and more smoothly when everybody's actively able to kind of pay attention. If you're able to get people to play like devices on table with character sheets, if they're using digital character sheets, I think that works too. But yeah, that's just a personal preference. I think it's worth trying if you haven't tried it yet. It feels really good. It's fun to be present. Yeah, that's all I got to say about playing in person. Playing through Roll20. So this is what we used for episodes 1 through 138. Way longer than I remembered. Of Third Action. It's very free. You can pay for a monthly subscription, but you don't really need to. But if you do, your players get all the benefits, so that's nice. What I ran into was that there's very limited ability for automation. Stuff like tracking status effects is pretty difficult. They have very, very limited compendium support. I think it's gotten better in recent years, but over the course of using Roll20 for Pathfinder 2e specifically, their character sheets are not great. I had to make my own, and then it got really cumbersome to try to keep up with their API changes and so forth. It gets much easier to start just using Roll20 just as kind of just for the tabletop and not so much for the character sheets, and start looking up things outside of Roll20. It works though. It's a good start, especially if you're low on funds. I think it's perfectly fine. Eventually you might want to upgrade or sort of grow out of it. And honestly, it's of the online platforms I've used, I think it's actually the most amenable to sort of off-the-cuff play. And specifically because it has really good drawing skill, or drawing tools. I say really good. I mean, it's really basic drawing tools, but they're very fast to use. It's very easy to sort of drag tiles on and off the map and move things around. I find this a lot more difficult in Foundry, which is what I'll talk about next. You're redeeming bad omens? I can't. There's nothing I can do with them, but sure, I'll take a bad omen. Thank you, Will. Yeah, it's great for starting out. Will says, I hate it now that I have Foundry, but I do think it's probably a starting point. I agree. Roll20 is a great starting point, especially if you're brand new to TTRPGs, or if you're not as technical. Foundry is great. I love it. It's what we've been using since episode 139, and I'll probably just keep using it onto the future. It's a way more technical setup. You need a $50 license to sort of create a world. And by default, you need to run it off of your own computer, but you can pay hosting services like the Forge or run a web server or something to do it, but that costs additional money, and that's money over time. So it's not like you pay $50 and that's it. Like some people might have you believe. But on the flip side, it is way more customizable than Roll20. I think there's a point with Roll20 where you reach that you're like, damn it, I wish it would just track ammo, or I wish it would just do this or this or this. And I'm here to tell you that Foundry can do all that. Maybe not 100% of those things, maybe not yet, but it can, and it probably will eventually. So yeah, if you want that stuff, I think it's... Oh yes, and with enough modules you can slow your game down to a crawl. Yes, I agree, Will. I think so. I think I need to probably turn off a bunch of modules in my own instance of Foundry, but they're so fun. They're very fun to play with. Also, as a result of adding lots of modules to get heavy customization, Foundry updates really fast. Like, they update pretty regularly, like at least once a month, I think. And the modules update faster than that. So it's very frequent that something will just randomly break from week to week if you're keeping up on your updates. If there's a major Foundry version update, most of the systems take a little while to update as well. So you have to be really careful. Check with your systems before you update to make sure they're even compatible with the new Foundry version. There's some upgrade headache that can happen when you've got a lot of modules, or if your system is a little slow to update. But it has a lot of automation. It makes your job a lot easier. It's a lot simpler to run games. I do think there's a downside to automation, and that is, I think for some players, automation can be a crutch to an extent. It makes it easier to not learn the rules. And you might not care about that, that's fine. But you sometimes will end up with players just trusting the system a lot and not realizing that, like, maybe they've entered something wrong and just assumed that the system was correct. So if you're the GM and you're using heavy automation, make sure you do audits sometimes, just to double check that the players have entered everything correctly into their sheets. They might have missed a +1 or somewhere or another, and it can have subtle effects on your game that might get missed. But I think it's relatively minor, and I think a lot of the automation just it makes the game, I think, easier to run. Though I don't think the game is actually that hard to run at the table, as it turns out. The other benefits, it's got very complete and very quickly updated compendiums, thanks to the community for, I think it's Timon? I forget who all the people are who are involved in the project, but they get their shit updated fast. So as soon as there's a Foundry update, or as soon as there's a new Pathfinder book that comes out, they're on top of it. They've got new updates. So you can basically be sure that all the major items are ready to go. It's also really easy to add homebrew compendiums for yourself. The biggest downside for me personally is that I think it requires a lot more pre-session prep to play or to run games in Foundry than it does to run them in Roll20 or in person. I think in person is the easiest for me, just because I don't need to go make battle maps. Battle maps take up so much time, and the kind of higher fidelity that you get out of making battle maps in Foundry with better lighting, better walls, all that sort of stuff. Even though it is easier to make those walls and easier to set up those lights, I think it's very easy to get in that mindset of shit, this map doesn't look so good. I gotta tweak the lights more. I gotta add more stuff to the background. That it looks cool and the players like it, but rein yourself back a bit. Pull yourself back. Please stop calling you out. Well, yeah, I know. I'm calling myself out, okay? I get obsessed. So I use a lot of Dungeon Draft when I'm working with Foundry, because it's not really easy to make maps in Foundry itself. There's a couple of add-ons for it, but I don't really like them. I feel like using Dungeon Draft to sort of build a map first and then import it in, I think has been my best approach, but that doesn't really work when, say, the party is like, hey, why don't we stop into this shop? Or let's look for a bakery. And get in a fight there, and you're like, shit, I do not have any bakery maps pre-made. I don't. If you try to go assemble them from tiles and stuff on the fly, it takes a really long time. It's something that's much easier to do in Roll20 and infinitely easier to do in person, just because of the less need for fidelity means that you can do things a lot faster. So that's my downsides for playing in Foundry. But also, I'm here to tell you, as a GM, it's fine. You do not have to go the full distance. You do not need to make extremely hyper-detailed maps. It is very fun to do so, but please do not kill yourself. The game comes first. I mean, your health comes first. The game comes second. Yes. That's the way I wanted that to be worded. Agreed. I have taken 2 for Crimson Throne to build the entire book first before I run. Yes. Mark Alexander Cross. Yes. I definitely do that as well. And it takes a while. It takes a while to set up, and it's nice, but you do have to kind of like preemptively figure out where the party might go. I've taken to having like a couple of pre-prepared maps for like random locations that are like generic locations that the party might go, but even that doesn't quite feel right. Yeah, I don't know. If anybody's figured out ways to set up in Foundry faster, definitely let me know. But that's kind of my slowest prep time moment is basically just building maps. I like it, but it's slow. Okay, so other things that I use the GM screens, the official GM screens that Paizo releases. I think I should be able to switch this here. The one I have beside me during streams most of the time is, I think, the landscape screen. It's very big. It's like a 4-panel thing. It's got a bunch of helpful stuff on it, lots of cool tables. There's the travel speed table that I'm constantly referencing. DCs by level is like by far the thing I'm referencing the most in this game. It's super handy. I love these GM screens. Not so useful, I guess, for the online games, but I still have it here. I like flipping around in it, and it's just cool to look at. I like the widescreen, or the landscape one, I think, the best, but the advanced GM screen is also really good. I like the landscape one because at the table you can see over it. Or the GM can see over it to the players, so it's handy. I've thought about maybe putting the putting the wide GM screen here in front of me, but I feel like that's a little bit weird positionally. Oh, and I can't reach my keyboard. That's the more important thing. I always forget that. Okay. So after the GM screen, Archives of Nethys. If you're not familiar with it, as a newbie to Pathfinder, definitely go check it out. They have they are the official source for all of the rules online. You do not need to buy any of the Pathfinder books to have access. It's very handy. They've also got a newer search feature that you can use that you can do some pretty advanced filtering. So I use this a lot in my preparation for games. To find random creatures. I use them for just rules references all the time. I use it to search for spells, that sort of thing. Great resource, love it. The guys at Archives of Nethys are basically doing this for free. You can also support them on Patreon, like I do. And you don't get anything for it, but you get to support a cool cause. They're pretty awesome. Definitely take advantage of that if you are a GM. Similar to that, I like the Pathfinder 2 Easy Library. This is a very similar resource to Archives of Nethys. They've got most of the rules, if not all of the rules, online, with a very, very nice and quick, easy search bar. Sometimes it gets a little buggy, but I think for the most part, it's got the information in very kind of like clean, nice little packaging, very simplified. They've got some good additional tools. I like their spellbook tool a lot, even if it's a little bit slow. I use that to do a lot of spellbook prep for characters, or creatures, NPCs, that sort of thing. I also do it for fast rules lookups, because they have a very good autocomplete. So usually during the game, if you see me like rushing off to the side to type something, I'm usually like typing PF2 easy and then searching for whatever rule or creature or something on that. So yeah, hidden gem for 2E for sure, says Mark Cross. Yes, definitely. If you don't know about this tool at your GM, I think it is a great asset. Next is the PDF Image Extraction Wizard by RL Vision. If you are an online GM like I am, being able to extract the images out of PDFs is super handy. I love running Paizo APs, but all the art is hidden in those PDFs, and you gotta get it out somehow. This tool gives you, annoyingly, if it's a PNG image, it'll often give you 2 copies of the image. One that's got all the color, and one that's kind of like a black and white alpha channel. you have to use Photoshop or you could use another tool to basically use the black and white version of the image as a mask to get rid of to sort of create a transparent version of the other image. If you need help on that, you can ask me in Discord or something. But super handy tool if you know how to use it. I'm sure there's others out there, but it's just the one I happen to use. Calculator! I am not sad that I'm very slow at math. I'm incredibly sad that I'm slow at math, but I like to have a little simple calculator at the table for just any random calculation, just so I can do it and get it out of the way. I don't like thinking too hard about the numbers while I'm playing, because I don't want to slow the party down. If you're good at math already, it's fine, but you don't need such a thing. But I like to have it just because I know I'm personally slow at math, and I get freaked out and tense and anxiety driven when I'm suddenly asked to do big calculations with while I'm also trying to run the game. So yes, in fairness, the 2e math is much easier than 1e, correct. It was much more important when I was running 1e games when the numbers got really, really big. But doing very quick math is much simpler. So not as necessary for 2e, but I still like to do it. What I often do is I'll often, if I'm doing kind of like a temporary creature, I'll have their HP in the calculator and I'll just do the subtractions there rather than try to enter it in Roll20, for instance. I was frequently doing that on Roll20. In Foundry, I more or less just put the creature in, so I don't have to do that anymore. Now type boobs. No. But yeah, just a small thing that I have on my table. Internet resources. I like to use the Pathfinder _RPG and Pathfinder 2e subreddits. Do not use the Pathfinder subreddit. That one's for Pathfinder Society. They will get mad at you. Maybe they don't get mad at you anymore, but I've seen them get mad at people before. There's also the official Pathfinder 2nd Edition conversion guide for doing 1E to 2E conversions, like I've done here with Rise of the Runelords. It's okay. It's a resource. I just wanted to list it just in case you didn't know about it. More helpful than that, if you're running any 1st edition AP, there's been a great community of people at the series of dice-based events. They've got a GitHub page, which I've linked here, as well as a Discord, where they've basically people have just been contributing their own details to various conversions for basically all of the adventure paths. So I use the community version as a base for a lot of stuff. I think I only knew about it about halfway through this run of Rise of the Runelords. When did I start using it? Maybe around... It must have been in book 3, I think. I remember using it for something in Hook Mountain Massacre. I feel like... yeah, I think that was around when I discovered it. And it's pretty good. If you're sticking pretty close to the encounters in the book as is, I think they do a pretty decent job. There is a little bit of overuse of making creatures elite, or double elite, as it says. Use it as a guide. Don't treat it as like this is what I have to do. This is the official conversion or anything. They're very good baselines, and they'll give you some good ideas for sort of how to build encounters. Yeah, it depends on how much of a rush I'm in. I think towards the end of the run, I don't think I used any of the encounters that they presented as is. I started switching to building the creatures more fully on my own. And then in addition to that, I love the Pathfinder, the official Paizo forums GM reference threads. Every adventure path has one, or has one per book, basically. Maybe not I think the Starfinder ones do too. I'm pretty sure I use them for Starfinder as well. People will often comment various things that they've done in their own games, how their parties have handled different situations. They'll ask questions about the APs as written, even though these are all in 1st edition, or most of these are 1st edition threads. There's still a lot of helpful info for 2nd edition play. a lot of it's like making sense of story beats. What should you do about such and such character? Should such and such character die? Very, very handy. They've got lots of great ideas. Definitely make use of it. Even if I don't like hanging out on the forums, I do like those forum threads for reference. They're very good. Very, very good. And then Pathfinder 2, or PF2.tools. I love their stuff for building homebrew. These scribe, template, and monster tools are all very, very useful. I like them for making nice little sheets that look like official rules, but are not quite official. So this is very handy. Catching up on chat here. Yeah, it isn't math that make 2e complex, it's complexity. Yeah, basically. What do I do if my party keeps the positive in the plot? Yes, that has happened to me. Unfortunately, I don't think that's come up in the GM reference thread. All right, so all that out of the way, preparing for the actual adventure. What do we do? Oh, I meant to remove that slide. That was just a placeholder slide. Okay, so resources for this adventure specifically. I guess Rise of the Runelords as a whole. Obviously, you have the book. I have actually like 3 copies of this fucking adventure path. I have one of the original copies of the anniversary edition that has just completely fallen apart after a full run of it. And then I got a second copy of it because I just like the adventure a lot. And then they came out with the like special edition version, which this is the book, but it actually comes in like a bigger kind of comically large steel case book that this goes in. And as you might be able to see, I have worn this book down, which is okay because I love this book. It's the Sahedron is kind of slowly degraded over time, but I'd rather a book be worn and used. Mildly weathered, yes. Will, thank you. I'd rather the book be used than unused and sit on my shelf. But I've enjoyed it. I like the special edition version because it's got a little red tassel, like bookmark tassel, that I use to sort of keep my place a lot. The special edition version also, do I still have any of the handouts in here? On the handout pages, they're actually, oh yeah, here's an example. So here's, I believe these are Aldern's potential notes to the party when he becomes the Skinsaw Man. And there's like, they actually put the handouts in the book, and you can kind of like slide them in and out. I've forgotten to put some of them back in, but I think they're sitting inside the steel case book, so I need to reset all of my pages nicely. But yeah, very, very handy book. I like having the physical version, but the PDF is good too. There's also the official Rise of the Runelords Player's Guide. That's a free PDF that you can give out to your players. It goes over some details of kind of the background of the story that the players would actually have access to. Mostly just info on Sandpoint, maybe a little bit on Magnamar, and some stuff about goblins and things like that, and some ideas for character backstories. You can augment that if you want with additional homebrew options, or maybe go through the core book and select some stuff for the players. That's handy too. Or select some interesting backgrounds and things that might be useful for the players, or make your own. I think those are all pretty handy. Location-specific reading. I really, really like Sandpoint Light of the Lost Coast. It's very, very useful for Sandpoint, which is a major component of books 1 and 4 of Rise of the Runelords. Once you get to Magnamar, the City of Monuments in book 2, you want a copy of Magnamar, City of Monuments. I didn't use that in this run of the AP. Maybe I got it really late. But if you want to have the players spend more time in book 2 in Magnamar, then I think it's really handy. It goes into way more detail than the book actually does. Rise of the Runelords does include a Sandpoint. It has a very detailed Sandpoint glossary, but a less detailed Magnamar one. So you can get by without Sandpoint Light of the Lost Coast, but Magnamar City of Monuments is a little bit more interesting. If you decide to have the party stop by Riddleport, which I think is pretty reasonable, I included it in our run more because we had a character that was sort of related to it in Gun Show. But the first book of Second Darkness, called Shadow in the Sky, has a big article about Riddleport, the city of ciphers, on page 48, as well as some more side info about Riddleport. That's like the biggest, I think, official info on Riddleport that's available. And I also like Varizia, Birthplace of Legends. It's got some info on the Varizians and the Shawanti, even though it's a first edition book. It's like a paperback. The PDFs of these are all available on paizo.com. Very useful. If you want more just kind of broad information about Golarion, I like the Pathfinder wiki at pathfinderwiki.com. Very good 1E books that are still very, very relevant, even though the rules aren't necessarily important for 2E. I like the Inner Sea World Guide for just kind of broad information about the Inner Sea region. But I also really like Inner Sea Gods, which, if you've seen the second edition book Gods and Magic, it's like Gods and Magic on crack. It is a very full book. It's got tons of information that is not in Gods and Magic. Some of it might actually be irrelevant now, but I think it's got some cool stuff in there about so many different gods. It's a great resource if you like the gods of Golarion. The 2E books that I recommend picking up or looking into are the World Guide, the Character Guide, and Gods and Magic. I think those are the three, aside from like the core rulebook and stuff, that'll give you pretty fun, detailed information about what's going on in Golarion. Just be aware that all of the 2E books are written with the perspective that all of the 1E adventures are done. So you'll find some stuff about New Thassalon and the conclusion of various APs that hasn't happened in 1E. So watch out for that if you're reading through those. And then I put as a side note, Doomsday Dawn Part 1. If you're not familiar, during the Pathfinder playtest, they put out an adventure called Doomsday Dawn, which is a playtest adventure. Part 1 takes place in Magnamar, but it's right before the events of book 1, and has ties to the sister of the mayor of Sandpoint. So it's kind of a fun little related story. I think it's cute to look at. I believe Doomsday Dawn is free, don't quote me on that. But it's very fun. I like it. Okay, so conversion tips for doing stuff bringing stuff from 1E to 2E. A series of dice-based events, like I said, is a great starting point if you're looking to convert something from an adventure path from 2E to 1E. I think the most invaluable stuff that you can have comes actually from the Game Mastery Guide for 2E. The section on building creatures and the section on building hazards are mandatory reading. It's worth noting that most of the creatures in Rise of the Runelords do have a second edition version of themselves, but they're typically not at the right level for where the party is in the adventure. It works out very well early on, so you actually don't have to convert things like goblins and goblin dogs. Those are all kind of at the right level. Things start getting weirder as you go up, and I think it's kind of like around book 2, or like the end of book 2 and start of book 3, when you start running into giants, where the giants are a little low level for where you are in the adventure by then, especially if you're adjusting the level scaling at all of the AP. And it's there we start having to do a lot more modification to keep the creatures kind of up to par, basically. It's usually the case is that a creature is way lower level in 2E than it is in 1E. That's by far what I've run into. I don't know if I've ever run into a 2E creature being more strong than the 1E version. Maybe Malfeshnikor in book 1? But even then, I think that was pretty close. The series of dice-based events, they tend to use elite and weak adjustments to kind of alter creatures. I prefer to just redo the stats with the numbers that are in the creature guidelines. and then just keep the abilities. In later books, you can try to build troops out of lower level enemies. So like the party will basically be running into stone giants from book 3 till the end, and stone giants will quickly they're like level 8 creatures in 2e, so they very, very quickly outrun their usefulness. So you might want to start trying to put them in troops. But actually, what I've done in the sort of last, I don't know, 30 episodes of the game, was I started bumping up. I started leaving basically HP, AC, and effective character level or creature level at their defaults for a lot of creatures, but then bringing up their attack rolls, spell DCs, that sort of thing, to be like maybe like 3 or 4 levels lower than the party. So that way they can still attack and hit and potentially do damage. The party isn't like guaranteed to immediately crit save everything that they do. So there's still like a very minor threat, especially when added up, but they're not enough to... The party's still able to kind of easily crush them. The party gets lots of crits on them. The party can easily incapacitate them with incapacitation effects. And I think that actually feels a lot more fun than bumping up the HP. If you're playing longer games, if you're like sitting down playing 8-10 hour games, then you might not need to. It might not feel as much of a slog, but I actually I kind of like the feel of the lower HP, lower AC enemies. And yeah, I think I'm probably going to keep using that for the rest of my games. It's fun. It's nice. Yeah, checking up on the chat. Oh yeah, Will agrees that it's fun to wreck shop on enemies that you previously had to struggle with. Yes, strongly agree. Yes, you want them to kind of be just able to hit the party, but not enough to like consistently hit the party, and not enough to be like a really big annoyance in later encounters. So yeah. Gold rewards. I think by technicality, if you look at the cost of things in first edition and the cost of things in second edition, you basically should reduce the gold rewards by about 90%. I didn't do this. And I did this early in the adventure, I think, and then I stopped doing it. Part of it was because I have a party of 3 players and it's kind of a 4-person adventure. So I was sort of okay with giving the party more gold. But there's also kind of the situation with gold where I forget the name of the law, but the party's use of gold expands to meet the amount of gold they have. The party will burn through the gold. It's fine. If you don't mind your party having a little bit more access to magic items, it gives them more options to play with. I don't mind giving them quite a lot of extra money. It's a pretty high fantasy adventure, so it's not a huge deal personally. And I felt weird reducing a lot of the things like dragon hordes from being like 9,000 gold pieces to being 900 gold pieces. It just felt weird. You can kind of downgrade gold to silver and that sort of thing, but it doesn't quite have the same oomph. So I ended up keeping them relatively high, and I felt it was fine most of the time. I play really fast and loose with with wealth by level though, so I kind of let things go on for a bit, see how the party's doing, check their stashes. That I'll give them a big hoard of stuff. I think early on in the adventure path, the party gets more loot drops more regularly. As the game goes towards the end, it starts to kind of hoard resources. And then you get like big dumps in like a huge dragon horde or a big treasure vault or that sort of thing. So that's also another thing to look out for, is just kind of how you manage your treasure. I don't think you can really go wrong as long as you're careful about... Make sure you give out things like striking runes at the appropriate times so that the party can have good stuff. Change all dragon hordes to copper? No. Let's see. Replace treasure with party appropriate loot. A lot of 1E items just straight up don't exist in 2E. You'll just have to dig around to find stuff that makes sense. I like to pick stuff that works, that at least one member of the party could use if they wanted to. Using Archives of Nethys and PF2 Easy can make it a lot easier to dig for items. I actually said this is the most time-consuming part of prep. I wasn't thinking about map making at the time. This is the second most time-consuming part of prep, because I like to look through all the items and see what's interesting. You can just replace treasure hoards with just pure money if you want, but I think it's more fun and more personal to give out neat stuff. You will probably need to homebrew a few things. Most of the time you can find an item that's kind of similar. I've taken the approach of, I don't know, turn a wand into an earring, turn a wand into a ring, turn a wand into a whatever. It's not too hard to homebrew stuff in this game. And last point here is just, I don't know, embrace the imbalance. Let your party know that it's a conversion from 1E to 2E, so that they're not surprised. I think be fine with, I don't know, letting your party sometimes get something a little bit too powerful, and then ask them, or like take it away if it's getting too strong. Like that can be a conversation with you and the players. It's fine. I think it's hard to get too aggressive about like the specific balance of a conversion when it's not very official and it's not very scientific. So I don't know, just have fun with it. It'll be weird sometimes, be silly. Yeah, don't be afraid to spoil your kids. Yes, agree, Joey. It'll be fun. Okay. It's important, I think, to know the big picture of the story of Rise of the Runelords before you get started. Actually, you kind of want to work backwards from Karzug to the start. So by the end of the adventure, Karzug is your big bad guy. He's coming back to life through a very complicated resurrection scheme. Try to learn the details of how that works so that you're sort of ready to explain that should it come up. In order to defeat Karzug, the big bad, the party is going to have to go to the Runeforge. To find out about the Runeforge, they're going to need to defeat Mokmurian, who is currently searching for the Runeforge, because he knows it has some secrets that could potentially defeat Karzug. Mokmurian himself is an unwitting kind of pseudo-avatar to Karzug after accidentally setting him free from, or accidentally setting all his minions free in the Pinnacle of Avarice in Zinshalast some years ago. From there, you get to Lucretia and Zanisha, who are both working kind of alongside / underneath Mokmurian, who are directly trying to further his scheme of bringing Karzug back to life, or back to the material plane. It's really unclear whether or not the Karzug is really dead or what exactly is going on with Karzug's body in the story, but they're trying to bring Karzug back to Galarian. And they're working with Mokmurian to do it. They're both doing two different versions of the Sahedron ritual, which you should know about. So definitely think about that. Lucretia is, behind all the events with Baral Breakbones. Zanisha, on the other hand, is behind all the events in Magnamar, plus the events with Aldern, Foxglove, who the party is actually going to meet right at the very beginning of the game. So it's important to know that Aldern is important, that he is tied to the later further plot. Nualia, who is the villain of Book 1, is somewhat incidental. She is actually being affected by the Runewells of Wrath, which were triggered when Karzug's Runewell of Greed woke up. She and the events of the events of the Late Unpleasantness in Sandpoint are fairly unrelated to what's going on with Karzug. If you want, I recommend that you should try to tie Nualia a little bit into either Lucretia or Zanisha's plots. I had her have some, I think some notes or references to getting funding from Zanisha. just to bring things a little bit tighter together. It's not super necessary, but I think it helps a little bit. But yeah, knowing your villains from the beginning, I think is good to have in mind. Each book has its own kind of big story beat. You don't understand why Aldern isn't the big bad? He's only like the first part of that book. Well, he's a nice guy, by the way. He's not a nice guy. Okay, Sahedron. The Sahedron ritual requires a greedy individual to be marked with the Sahedron and then to die. It's important to know that right up front. It's also important to know that Karzug is going to try to... Well, he's going to spy on the party through the Sahedron items that the party acquires later on in Book 6. So I think it's really important to, as you start giving out the Sahedron items, which I believe the first one comes from Nualia, she has a Sahedron medallion for some reason. I think it's important to make those Sahedron items feel useful. In first edition, they were already kind of useful as is. They were just a flat bonus to saves, gave you false life, they gave you a general repose effect. Everybody wore them, easy peasy. In second edition, items that boost saves don't exist, so aside from resilient runes. So I made the choice in my 2e run to basically remove resilient runes and replace them with the Sahedron medallions, as like, this is new technology to the world. I think that worked out pretty well. I feel like the party was relatively surprised by the revelation near the end that the Sahedron medallions were being used by Karzug to speak through them. It added some spookiness, some tension to the whole situation. I think it's a fun reveal. It'd be a shame to miss out on that because, I don't know, the party threw them away the first time they got one. So yeah, I think call out the usefulness of the Sahedron as soon as the party gets one, and try to make sure that they keep using them. When the rituals of the actual ritual get revealed, try to avoid freaking the party out too much. I think I had to make it clear that wearing the Sahedron is fine. That's not going to get you your soul trapped. It's it needs to be etched into your flesh in some way. So good to bring up. Aldern's story is big and complex and results in my favorite Luigi game. Luigi's Mansion? Yes. Adam says, I was suspicious of the medallions from Turtleback Ferry and didn't notice the lack of resilient runes until very late. But when I did, I thought it was a great touch. Thank you. Yes, I was very subtle about... different GMs do different player shopping styles. I tend to do the shopping style of, here are the shops available to you, here's what they have in store. If you want to find other things, you can try to request, you can try to do special orders or requests. Not every GM likes to do that, but thanks to that style, I can very conveniently leave resilient runes off of every shopping list and never bring them up. And if the party conveniently has other ways of getting those bonuses, they will never think to ask. So, very handy. It's a very good way to cheat the system. Okay. Tracking sins. This is one of the things that the book mentions that you do from book 1 through book 5. It is a completely behind-the-scenes thing, and when it occurs, when it kind of comes to fruition in book 5, I like to use it as a fun, hey, yeah, let's look back at your life. What were the events that led up to this? Where were you? Where was your character slothful or gluttonous or what have you? A problem is that most players don't really fall into one category very nicely. You might often have like 1 or 2 players who very strongly identify with like one sin, but not very strongly with the others. So it can be a bit hard to work with. And the effects don't really matter that much mechanically. There's like a vague, my head hurts while you're in different wings of the Runeforge in book 5, based on what sin you're supposedly aligned with the most. If you're going to do the sin tracking, think about it a bit beforehand. Maybe look at that chapter to see how the Runeforge weapons work. and see how you want to track and run this. Honestly, after having done it twice, I might leave it out entirely. Next, I'm probably not going to run the adventure again, but I've run it too many times already. If I were to run it again, I might just leave out the sin tracking. It's fun to do. It's fun to think about. It's a lot of work for something that doesn't matter a whole lot. Adam wants to see everybody's now. Will says, "Oh my God, Greshy's write-up was hilarious." Thank you. Maybe I'll share those at some point. I guess I only shared them with the individual players, but I couldn't really find a good way to bring it up in game. That was a problem. And yeah, I tried to give people different, like, here's the list of things that you're more aligned with. I tried to use it as more of like kind of an RP prompt of like, here's sort of where your character falls in with. Think about that, and think about that with relation to what your Runeforged weapon could be when you craft it. Given that they're kind of tied with two different sins. If your character is really virtuous, or party's really virtuous, then you might not have anybody with sin aspects. They might all be virtues. That's also fine. It's fun to think about, but yeah, you could also just do it retroactively at the end. Just think back on your adventure, or take very minimal notes. Yeah, Mark is he's using the system, but not so focused on the actual tracker, just making ticks when a particular moment sticks out. Yeah, that's basically what I did. I more or less just tried to mark down a few specific moments that stood out to me, and then when we got to book 5, I sat down, thought about it really deeply, because I just like thinking about stupid characters and their stupid backstories. And I just tried to like put together what's the best narrative I could form around these. I think there's probably a really fun way you could do this to make mechanical sense or have it matter a lot more. I don't know what that is specifically, but it's a thing to think about. It's ultimately not super important, but you can use it to make Sins of Our Saviors, the book 5 of the adventure, stand out a little bit more. Okay. All right, so that leaves the actual contents of book 1, Burnt Offerings, Rise of the Runelords. Okay. Let's see. So yeah. Backstory, it's important to read the backstory. So I recommend doing like a big skim of the entire adventure. First, at least the backstory sections at the start of each chapter. I think that's pretty useful. But before you sit down to kind of play out Burnt Offerings, make sure you know about what happened to the Late Unpleasantness. That's I think 5 years ago, prior to the story starting. That's Jervis Stute's murder spree. That's the burning down of the cathedral by Nualia, where she kills her adopted father, Tobin, and Longiku murdering his wife. That's Mako's dad, Longiku Kaijitsu, yes. I actually fucked up a moment of this in our most recent run, surrounding the whole Longiku, Mako, and Suto plotline. I think I fucked up whether or not the relationships between them. I forget exactly what it was, but it's important to have that stuff kind of ironed out and ready to go. It's also important to sort of do a quick glance through and see who all the villains are in the chapter. Nualia is the big one. She's the big boss. Then you have her gang below her, Tsuto, Leary, Auric, Ruthasmus. You have the goblin leaders, Chief Rip Nugget and his kind of subordinate, Gogmert. And then you have, in the Catacombs of Wrath, you have Aurelian, the Quasit, who is actually a familiar of the Scribbler, who the party is not going to encounter until book 5? Yeah, I think that's technically book 5 when they encounter the Scribbler. And yeah, you'll want to know some of the things that you need to foreshadow in this part. The big things to foreshadow are Aldern. They're going to meet him pretty soon, like pretty quickly in the adventure, and he's a really big component at the start of book 2. So making sure that you're aware of that and don't kill him off, like a lot of GMs accidentally do. That's crucial. The the Catacombs of Wrath. The party will come back there in Book 5. So setting that up is like ooh, what's this? This is kind of a bit of a mystery. It's their first exposure to Thassalon as well. I believe they meet that like big statue of Elasnist in the Catacombs. You just have to be careful not to make it seem too appealing, and make it very clear that the party cannot progress further in the Catacombs in any reasonable time frame, because I think the adventure makes it easy for some parties to get really obsessed with trying to dig out there's a staircase that goes down further. Avoid intriguing them too much. And then the other thing is just the Karzug connections. You've got... Karzug is the big bad, so anywhere you can kind of sprinkle in his stuff that connects to his plot line. Here, I think the easiest stuff to do is through Zanisha and the Brotherhood of the Seven, which she's controlling. Anywhere you can connect that to the plot events that are going on, I think that's good. It sort of helps set up, the big overarching plot of the adventure. Okay. Rip Nugget. In James Jacobs' lore, he doesn't stay down. Oh, does he not? And Will just realized that we murdered the Scribbler's pet. Yes. She was his familiar. I don't know why she was up there. I guess by this point the Scribbler had already been revived by Lomash 2, but is currently just chilling in the lower reaches of the catacombs. It isn't until the Karzug's Runewell starts causing earthquakes that big sinkhole opens up and you're able to go down further. And honestly, I don't know if he even remembers Aurelium. It doesn't really come up specifically. But I think you do run into the Scribbler's room where he's got like weird writing on the wall. It's kind of fading just as it appears, and it's like kind of just out of view. There's some cool setup you can do there for the Scribbler and his later appearance. But yeah, setting up Sandpoint. So Sandpoint is the entire setting of Book 1. It's half of Book 2, and it's also pretty important in Book 4. It's basically your party's home. So make yourself at home. Make sure you know the big map of Sandpoint. Take a look at the appendix in the Bane Rise of the Runelords book. Take a look at the Sandpoint specific book, which I think is set slightly in the future, like after this AP is done, but before others are done. But it'll help you get to know a lot of the characters that are at play. I'm sure you, the GM, will have favorite NPCs. Feel free to use them. I found the ones that I found that are the most useful, or that come up the most in parties, are Mayor Deverin, Father Xantus, Sheriff Hemlock, Ameko Kaijutsu, and her, her inmate, the lady who runs the inn with her, Bethana Corwin, Shalelu Andasana, Broderick Quink, Ven Vinder. And then I think a lot of other parties tend to run into them more. I didn't really use them in either of my adventures, but a lot of people like the Scarnettis, which are like a crime syndicate that operates out of Sandpoint. I use them very mildly. I just didn't happen to have characters that were really into dealing with or like interacting with crime syndicates or had bad pasts with the crime syndicates. They are... Oh, what was Shaelis's deal? Shaelis is the daughter of Ven Vinder, and we'll actually get to that in a little bit. Yeah, daddy issues, basically, yes. She was selling watermelons. But yeah, I think these are kind of the big name NPCs. There's also the guy, I'm forgetting his name, but the one who runs the theater. There's the guy who runs the school. There's so many different characters in this town that it's your job as the GM to kind of learn a little bit about them and be ready to kind of roleplay them at a moment's notice. It really depends on what your party makeup is, what their personal tastes are. But I'm sure you'll grow to like a lot of these characters as I have over time. So the first part of this book is called Festival and Fire. The festival itself is where our party is sort of introduced to each other and the town. It kind of comes in two parts. There's like the big setup part, which is the role-playing part. That's the calm. And then the storm happens at the consecration speech when the goblins decide to attack, or when Suto decides to attack with the goblins. Or Suto uses the goblins to attack while he does some shady shit in the at the cathedral. During the calm part, this is the time where the players get to meet each other, they get to meet the townsfolk, and kind of start gauging their reactions to the different people. This is where I like to run a lot of skill minigames. The skill... I like to do simple skill checks versus like a flat DC. Sometimes you can run them as contested skill checks if multiple players want to do the same thing. There's a lot of different options here. The actual Paizo forums have a lot of great ideas for different minigame types that you can kind of adapt into your own skill checks and challenges. Just keep it limited. Don't have like, you guys can spend all session doing minigames if you're doing like a really long 8-hour session or something. Try to keep it to like a couple skill checks per person, or I think I didn't even remember what I did this last time, but I think the first time I ran it, I might have let each person pick one game to play. Have some small rewards. It's a great chance to meet random people in town, have various NPCs that are in the city run the games for you, so that the party has a chance to meet and interact with them. And this is also a really good chance to meet some less important NPCs. I like to set up, if you can, Venvender's daughter, Shayless, is a good character to introduce here, while the parties are kind of doing minor stuff. This is a really great chance for just kind of flavor and fun RP and getting to know the characters. I like this section a lot. How much of that or the other characters is written in versus what I added? There's a lot of detail on these characters. I improvise a lot with it. There's like just enough, I think, with these characters that you got a pretty good idea of their motivations, and then I can kind of just sort of play them off the cuff, reacting to how players interact with them. Like, I don't think Shayless is much more than she's got big boobs and wants to seduce a party member. I play her as like a bit ditzier and more clueless. We play Venvender as very angry about his family, trying to keep them safe. Yeah, I don't know. Basically every character has some kind of prompt with them that you can work with. So there's usually something you can do. It was Asher. Oh, yes, I believe Shayless did try Asher. She might have tried other characters too. What are some details that I added to some of the townsfolk in this book? I know I made up some townsfolk, like the popcorn salesman. Is there anything that I added to characters from this book? I always try to make a Mako more involved in the party just because I like her. Shirleylu's not here yet, but I do try to involve her a lot as well, also just because I like her a lot as a character. I try to have Father Xantus be more helpful. He's sort of helpful in the book as written, but I like him to be... If you've got a religious character, I think he's a good kind of sounding board for that. And he's also somebody who can heal the party, offer spells to the party and assistance. Sheriff Hemlock has a really deep backstory with him and his brother and their kind of family drama, and Sheriff Hemlock having that's not his original name. He changed his name to be more appealing to non-native Verzians, and there's so much weird little drama. I don't actually know how much I don't think there's actually that much that I made up for these characters. They have so much just random details that you could just grab random details and throw them in and just use them as is. It's just sort of what happens to be important, what you remember as the player or as the GM, and what things the party is attracted to. So yeah, once the initial assault happens, there's kind of 3 waves of combat that occur. This is easier to do in Pathfinder 1, where they don't expect you to take breaks in between fights. In Pathfinder 2, you have to be a little bit more careful about hurting the party too badly. So with Wave 1, I like to play the goblins as really just goofy. There's panic and chaos going around. There's more competent goblins getting more work done elsewhere. But the party here needs to deal with a group of very disorganized goblins. So having them only attack once per round, or having them kind of slip up and do shenanigans while they're trying to fight, I think is very appropriate. Definitely sing the goblin song here. Do not skip out on me. It's your duty as the GM to sing the horrible goblin song. But yeah, definitely take the book's advice. Use this encounter as just set dressing. Let your party fucking own these goblins hard. Do not go hard on tactics, because you need the party to survive three waves, basically. Father Xantus is nearby, so you can have him jump in to heal in between Wave 1 and Wave 2, but I think it's better to have him jump in after Wave 2 than before Wave 3. Because there is a bit more of a break, as encounter 1 and 2, or Wave 1 and 2 happen in the same area, and Wave 3 the party has to run to, and you don't want Father Xantus just hanging out with the party helping with the fight, because you also don't want Father Xantus to get killed. So keep Father Xantus alive. So yeah, Wave 2 happens. That's the one with 3 goblins and a pyro. 3 goblin pyros and the war chanter. Here you can start using a little bit more tactics, because you know Father Xantus is going to show up after to heal them. If you've got totally new players, this is where you can introduce some stuff like, if they don't have a bard, here's where you could use Inspire Courage to kind of show how that works. Try to keep things moving really quickly, snappy, make sure there's kind of like chaos going on in the background that the party's not privy to. You don't want the party to feel like they're the only people in Sandpoint fighting off the goblins. You want to make it clear that the other guards are just busy fighting more goblins off to the side. If you've got a really big party, I think you could combine Waves 1 and 2. Just be careful not to do any kind of focus fire. Excuse me, I remember this episode, and this is not how the map looked. No, this is not how the map... So, 1, this is just a section of the map that I screenshotted. I hand drew this map, I think, in Roll20. I was not doing very fancy maps at this point. Nor did I want to... So, side note, when you're using Pathfinder APs, even though they have these really nice looking maps in the book, they are very, very low res, and do not... they don't scale well. So even if you extract the images, they are very blurry. The grid lines are very badly spaced and are often nonsense. I think they're placed by eye or something, by the artist, and they don't work. So you're often gonna have to make your own versions of maps. It's one reason why playing in person's easier, because you could actually print out the map and put it down, and it's blown up, so it's fine. And nobody really cares if the grid lines aren't exact, but when you're running in Roll20 or Foundry, you need the grid lines to be very exact. So I'm often remaking maps, especially when you're running these old APs. The newer APs have official conversions for Foundry, so you don't have to worry about that there as much. I still like to make my own maps, so I don't know. I don't think Dungeon Forge existed when I got started doing this game. I used Dungeon Fog for a while. That was kind of okay. The web UI gets kind of slow. Yeah. Anyway, big aside. The next phase is Die Dog Die, Wave 3. I call it a wave, but there's a bit of separation here. Make sure that the party gets healed before they go do this encounter. You can still have there be kind of chaos around. You might allow them a full 10-minute rest to do a refocus or what have you, but I don't know if I would. It's sort of up to you. If you think you can make it thematically reasonable that the party is like chilling for 10 seconds, refocusing. You know what? I might have actually done this. I don't actually remember. I probably should have checked the episode. In any case, if you can make it seem reasonable that the party has like 10 minutes to rest here before they hear the scream of Aldern to trigger the next encounter, then feel free to do so. It's just a little narratively difficult to do that. That's why I kind of recommend being kind of softball-y on the first 2 encounters and then playing the third encounter sort of straight. Here's your first encounter with Aldern. Very important that you get his character right, or that you play his character how you're going to play him. This is where he picks his obsession target. He's got to pick one of your party members to obsess over. That's who he's going to focus on harassing for the entirety of his return in book 2. So try to keep an eye on like which character is doing the best in the fight. By default, he wants the way the book words it, he wants he targets a female party member first, and then if there is no female party member, he'll target whoever's the male party member who does the most damage. I don't give a shit about that. Aldern's bi. I don't care. He just picks whoever's the coolest. In our case, he picked Asher. I think Asher might have gotten the final blow in that fight. Alex thinks I did give them the breather. Okay. I thought I might. I just couldn't remember. Asher one-shot the elite. Ah, yes. Okay, that's why I picked Asher then. But in any case, make sure that Aldern is fawning over the party. Be careful not to overdo it. I think here in the episode, I made a mistake on remembering the dog's name, which made for a funny it gave him this kind of airheaded quality of him being very dismissive of his own dog that he cared about. So feel free to steal that if you want. It's funny. Just be careful. Keep Aldern out of the action. He's got to survive here. Remember to also have him promise a reward to the party after the encounter. Let them know that he's staying at the Rusty Dragon and to come meet him, or that he'll come meet them at the Rusty Dragon to give them a prize later. Just so that they've got that hook in their brain. This is also a really good chance to show off the goblins and their hatred of horses and dogs, or their fear of horses and their hatred of dogs. This is also watch out for the fucking goblin dogs, because they have goblin pox. It can be really annoying for the party. Make sure you know how it works. Both in 1E and 2E it can be annoying. Just be aware of it. Know those rules before you run the combat. And then make sure a party is there, a crowd is there to watch the PC's victory and cheer for them at the end. Because the next part of the adventure assumes that they were seen doing cool heroic shit. So they're going to become local heroes. This is their time. This is their big chance to be local heroes. All right, local heroes, part 2. Let me take a sip of water because I'm going to kill my throat doing this. All right, there's a lot of parts here. Local heroes is your first look at a non-linear section of the adventure. They like to do this every once in a while in some of these APs, where you get they kind of give you here's a list of events that the party can end up in. They can do them in any order. Have fun. This is your chance to really get the party more involved in Sandpoint, whether you use these events or not. Some of them you can replace. It's important here to make sure. I think there's a meeting with Hemlock where he kind of informs them about a lot of, or about their status as heroes, etc. Make sure that Hemlock sets some boundaries on their duties as deputies. A lot of parties will immediately want to go seek out and destroy all the goblins, and that's not how the adventure is framed, so don't let the party run off to Thistletop. They will get crushed. Keep them reined in. a little bit. Make them wait. I like to make them wait for Shalelu. You can mention that Shalelu is out there doing some reconnaissance, looking for the goblins and where they came from. Use that as a chill and help out in town until Shalelu gets back. And I think that's a good way to sort of keep the party from running away and going off doing other things. This is a great time to build deeper relationships within the town. By the time you get to book 4, at the start of book 4, there's a big attack on Sandpoint. You want the party to have connections to Sandpoint before that happens. So here is your really big chance to roleplay that out. Meet more people, interact with characters that they enjoy interacting with, be a bit silly with it. Just have fun. Which ones did we do or not do? Which did we skip that made me the most bummed? Actually, I think in this section you might have done all of them. So I think I did what my suggestion is here, which is that I believe Hemlock gave you a list of all of the events, at least on third action. I think that's how I did it. I don't remember how the book actually words it. But it's useful to arrange it in that way. There is one that I think can be skipped very easily. The rest, I would try to keep the rest, but you know your party and what they'd be interested in, so. The first big event is the Desecrated Vault. This is where Father Xantus tells the party that there's some weird shit going on in the graveyard behind the cathedral. And the party has the chance to learn that someone was using the Goblin Raid as cover for them to mess with these bones. Turns out it was later on the party might find out that this was Suto doing this, and that Suto was the leader of the goblins, that the goblins were actually organized for this. Mark, this is art of Xantus from the Sandpoint book, Sandpoint Light of the Lost Coast, I think. The one I mentioned earlier. It's some pretty sick art. A lot of the characters actually have separate full body art in that book, which is very nice. Here you see a combat Xantus ready to do battle with his star knife. This is your chance to do some Desna lore at the cathedral. I mean, there was a lot of Desna lore in during the festival as well. I probably should have mentioned that. Desna's fun. You can do a lot of stuff with Desna. There's also the other shrines that are here at the temple. If you've got party members of different gods, you can involve them in that way. If you need to, heal and bless. Father Xantus can use heal and bless and some similar spells to support the party. Don't have him try to take the spotlight. He's just here to support. You don't want to make it seem like Father Xantus could have dealt with the skeletons in the graveyard by himself. He needs the party to do that. The other thing here is that Father Xantus knows about the backstory of Nualia. I don't remember if the book mentions this, but he does know this, and when the party finds out that Tobin's bones have been stolen, this is a chance for Xantus to kind of explain, oh yeah, the church burned down, Nualia and Tobin died. It was so sad what happened between them. He can give a lot of that information, and he is very, very handy for that. Make sure you do that here. I don't think you should skip this event. It's the stuff with Suto is relatively unimportant here because the party might not even figure out that it's Suto who's involved, but the stuff about Nuali's backstory is important, and there's very few other opportunities to get that information. So use your Nualia backstory here. The Shopkeep's Daughter. This is the one with Van Vender. Oh, actually, you guys kind of missed this event, Adam. This is... It's basically an introduction to Van Vender, who they kind of use as a red herring in Book 2 as a scapegoat for the murders. He has two daughters, Shayless and other girl whose name I've forgotten. The other daughter is the one who gets murdered at the beginning of Book 2. and along with her lover at the sawmill or lumber mill. So Ven Vendor gets jailed, and because they believe that he might have done it. He's got like a big temper about it. So he's jailed, and I don't think Hemlock really thinks that he did it, but they're doing it for more out of safety for Ven than anything else. And you can use this as you can use this event to kind of build up some amount of antagonism between Ven and the party. To make that, if the party goes to interrogate him, it's supposed to be kind of awkward and heated a bit. Katrine? Yes, Katrine and Betty Harker are the... Betty Harker is her amore, and Katrine is the other daughter of Ven. It's a pretty amusing encounter if your party's into it. Do not try it to force it to happen. It's a little risque, I suppose. If you want, you could have Ven just catch the PCs just chatting with her, even if they don't intend to do anything with her, and use that as an attempt to start a fist fight. Just be very careful about... don't let the party kill Ven Vendor. Don't go so far that the party feels like they need to murder him to live. That I've seen reports of that kind of derailing games where party members had to get sent to jail because they murdered him, and just don't do that. Like, be careful here. Play it simple. He's just got a temper. He is also just a normal guy. He should let up if it comes to a fist fight. Let's see. Was the stone statue? Was the statue carver guy who had Was the statue carver killer guy whose hut was burned down just a red herring too? Pretty sure it's based on Jason's reactions for our searching. He's not a red herring, so to speak. That's one of the events that happened in the Late Unpleasantness, which was triggered by the Runewell of Wrath getting triggered by Karzug's awakening. So Karzug awakens, his Runewell powers up, it triggers a bunch of other rippling Runewells. The Runewell of Wrath does some shit under Sandpoint, makes people who are particularly susceptible to Wrath go haywire. This fucks up Ameka's father, who forces him to kill his wife. Not forces him, makes him kill his wife. It makes that artist guy go on a rampage, and it makes Nualia burn down the temple. So it's more just backstory. It's not really... that one is not really relevant to any of the current things that are going on, other than it being how Sheriff Hemlock became sheriff. So yeah, it's a semi-red herring. It doesn't have to be very important. You could just leave it. I think the first time I ran the game, I didn't even mention it. It's mild, but it's interesting, so players can take an interest to it. Okay, next encounter, Boar Hunt. This kills players. It also kills Aldern. I have seen players get killed here. I've seen Aldern get killed here by other parties. Be very careful. This is your first excursion out of Sandpoint, so you can use it to kind of show off the Sandpoint hinterlands a little bit. Just watch out for boars. They are very, very dangerous. They can absolutely take down a party member in one hit at this level. They are very scary. Try to keep Aldern out of the actual combat, or he can be in the combat, just try to keep him from getting targeted. You're supposed to play him as kind of like the party's clueless rich friend. Don't make him very overtly sinister. Don't make him overly obsessive yet. Just keep him fawning. Make sure he's... I like to play him as kind of a fun, silly character here. And then he should shower the party with praise. He should give them a reward afterwards. I think by default he gives them a nice filigreed crossbow. Happened to work for Asher in our game, but you can make that anything you want. So give the party something they will like, so that they feel a little bit bad about having to kill him later. Given that the boar hunt has to go a certain way, I'd almost not run it as a combat. No, I like running it as a combat. I think boars are fun to fight. They're just scary. If your party is not careful, you can absolutely get rolled. I like almost, yes, I do like almost murdering people, Will. Yes, exactly. Oh, Mark says a writer did release a side adventure for Paizo that involved the Chopper Island Stute. Oh, that's cool. I like it. Almost murdering is the best kind of murdering. Yes, I agree. Horrible tomato. Yeah, so I like running it as a pure combat. The boars are fun to fight. Just use one boar. See how your party fights it. Just be if it manages to gore someone and like take someone out in one hit, you can have it kind of back away, and potentially get away. That's fine. In second edition, I don't think it should actually ever kill anybody. It was much easier to kill people in first edition with this. The next event, as listed in the adventure, is Trouble at the Rusty Dragon. This one I kind of fucked up the last time. I think I mentioned this. I mixed up some of the details about Ameko's backstory here. So make sure you know those details pretty well. Important to note that Ameko needs to show up later in Jade Regent, so canonically she survives. So whenever you're dealing with Ameko, make sure that she lives if you can. I suppose she can get rezzed, but it's just a thing to note. Don't have her go kill herself willy-nilly. Just be careful with her. Play with her like a precious pawn piece. This event should basically play out like a cutscene. Sometimes I feel like this last the party I ran third action with basically didn't interact with her while this was happening. They just kind of watched it from afar and let her do her thing. I think my prior party to that, I believe the investigator in the party might have told her father to shut the fuck up. This is when her father appears and berates her at the end. This is set up for her father's death coming shortly. Make sure you do this as soon as possible. If you're not, what's the word? Some of the events in this section need to happen over a couple of days, and Ameko needs to get kidnapped after this, and that kicks off the next section of the book. But by the time she's kidnapped, her father has already gone back to the glassworks and has gotten captured by Tsuto and has been murdered. And that needs to realistically, you need like at least a day between that event. Between these two events. So try to make sure this happens a little bit early, especially if your party's doing a bunch of events in one day. Let's see. Next up, Monster in the Closet. This is the most skippable encounter in this part. It's a bit more on the human side, but the characters involved are sort of unimportant. It's some random NPCs that are only in this adventure. I think it's the one where the father goes to check his kid. His kid is like, oh no, there's a monster in the closet, and his dog has disappeared in the closet. Turns out it's a goblin in there. The dad goes in to try to figure out what's going on. He never comes out. The mom and kid get worried. They call you, the adventurers, to go check it out. It's only one goblin. You could run it as a fun like single character, or like a two character fight. It's very easy to skip if you don't want to do it though. I'm pretty sure I ended up running this. I don't remember how it turned out. It's relatively quick, so you're not gaining a whole lot for skipping it unless you're running it in like a format like a stream. In which case, sure, skip it. Doesn't matter. Mark says this one you skip. Yeah, totally reasonable. I think I was tempted to skip it last time, but I might have told the party about it beforehand. Shrug. I don't think the party learns anything of import here. The next one is the grim news from Mosswood. This is when Shillelagh returns and gives the details on like the deal with Thistletop and whatnot. If you do this too early, if you tell the party that the goblins are at Thistletop, they will immediately want to stop what they're doing and go to Thistletop. Don't have her show up here. Just wait. Wait until after the events with Ameko are done, in my opinion. It removes the kind of distraction. Because if you the way the book is worded, you kind of have her appear, you tell them about Thistletop, and then when the players go back to the inn for the evening, they find out that Ameko's missing. You really strongly, by having Shalelu turn up here, you really strongly run the risk of the party not going back to the inn, which then you have to make up some convoluted reason, like maybe you need Bathana Corwin to come running out to the party to catch them. It's just a little weird. I think it works more story-wise if you just move this event to later. Shalelu is a character that shows up later. She shows up in Second Darkness. She also shows up a lot in Book 3. She's a fun character to have around. She's just kind of a cool, badass ranger. A lot of players like her. It's basically her and Ameko are basically the two fan favorites from this adventure, to varying degrees. Your party will probably like one or both of them. Don't be surprised if players want to try to romance either of them. I've seen that happen as well in plenty of games. They're cool characters. So yeah, try not to get them killed. Let's see. And then the last event in this section is the missing bartender. If you did a good job of making Ameko fun and friendly, the party will immediately want to go rescue her. Good. You probably don't need to provide any kind of incentive. I don't even think the book tries to provide you with any, like, monetary incentive for saving her. She's just a fun character. You want to see her saved. She's giving you free rooms and free food. That's good. I like to try and start this one in the evening because I think it's spookier to investigate the Sandpoint Glassworks at night. If you've got wizards or other prepared casters in your party, you might consider doing it in the morning instead, after they've had time to prep, or like as they're getting time to prep, just so that they can have their spell slots ready, or adjust their spell slots to a more combat-heavy day. But yeah, it's sort of up to you how you want to run it. I prefer to do it on a day that doesn't have any other encounters, because the party might want to do multiple encounters in a row to save Ameko. They're probably not going to be willing to leave her to die, or leave her trapped at in the glassworks. So, in most cases. So yeah, I would wait till they've got a fresh day, then pop the event on them. Sort of a joke, says Joey. Do you have a few words to say about the doors? Yes, there's a lot of doors. It's the beginning. I guess this being the first real dungeon, which, I mean, we're getting to, Glass and Wrath. It's the first real dungeon. It's where you start to encounter the good old Paizo doors and hallways. Doors that lead to hallways that have multiple doors in them, which lead to rooms that have many doors in them, which lead to alcoves, which for some reason have doors on the other end. Yeah, it's a lot of doors and hallways. Okay. So, there's sort of three, well, we'll just get into this actually. So, investigating the glassworks, there's the part at the beginning where you're kind of exploring the glassworks. It kind of depends on which way you come in, whether or not you see the goblins right away. I like to keep the goblin fight and the Tsuto fight separate. They're kind of written such that the goblins will try to run away to go grab Tsuto and bring him in. I did that the first time. When you do it that way, I ended up having Tsuto fight the party kind of in the main glassworks area where Longiku is displayed, or Longiku's body is displayed in melted glass. It works. I like it a little bit better if Tsuto is already underground in the catacombs with a few sin spawn. It just kind of mechanically works out a little bit better that way. And yeah, then you can also put a Mako a bit further in as well. But it's sort of up to you how you want to run it. I just like the two fully separate encounters if you can. Actually, is that how I'm now having, is that actually how I ran it? Did I actually fully separate the fights, or did I have the party encounter Tsuto and then chase after him into the catacombs? That might have occurred as well. I don't actually recall. Chat might have remembered. Oh yes, this orientation of the map is different. I like to rotate all the maps to be north up if I can. The map as presented in the book is north to the right, which is confusing. They do it based on whatever spacing. Ido, what do I not remember? Is that the question? I don't remember whether or not Tsuto fought them with the goblins, or like came to fight with the goblins. Mark says, I think they fought them, then he bailed and had a second round with catacombs. Okay. That sounds equally plausible. But yeah, I think I would just fully separate them, but yeah, I don't know. It's not a huge deal either way. Run it how you feel. A lot of players will try to capture or interrogate Tsuto, have some idea of how that's going to go. The book writes him in a somewhat unhelpful way, where he's just like, he's willing to die for the cause and will not give up any information and will basically kill himself. I ran him as killing himself the first time, and I feel like that created a really bad... it created a weird vibe in the party from then on, where they decided no, literally no one is ever worth saving anymore. So they were often just executing everyone. Did he do that to you too? Yeah, kinda. I tried to make it at least a bit more clear that he specifically was unwilling. Yeah, okay, he did make a speech and off himself. Yeah, okay. Damn it. Yeah, all three of you remember him killing himself. Okay, in that case, have him kill himself. I think the way I did it with this party was better than the way I did it with the other party, though. I believe Cap was in the chat, or was in the chat earlier. Yeah, just be careful with how you manage characters that don't want to give up any information and are always wanting to fight to the death. Try to make it clear that yes, even though Tsuto specifically is too committed to the cause, that not literally everyone is not like that. Yeah, it's just a little note. It's useful to keep in mind for basically every other character in the game. Sometimes the party wants to capture people, sometimes they give info. It's also okay to not have characters give info. They can be unhelpful, they don't have to respond to interrogation. But yeah, after you rescue a Mako, if you have the party rescue a Mako, I think it's fun and useful to have her help out through the catacombs. She's just a fun character. It's nice to have her around. It also makes her less of a, I don't remember, the book actually might suggest that she helps out. But she's an adventurer too, so it's useful when she can help out that she does. Oh, Cap said yes, it was just shocking. He threw himself into the glassworks. Yes, I believe that's what he did. He did walk himself into the fire as the party... I remember now. The party was trying to grapple him and force him to surrender and get some interrogation in, because, again, they had an Inquisitor, but he just threw himself into the glassworks fire and offed himself like that. And I believe, yeah, from then on, I think the party didn't try for a while. Until I think I had to say something like, it's fine, actually. Not everybody's going to be like that. In any case. The Glassworks, I think you should try to do in one night if you can, just because there's kind of time pressure on a Mako. There's not a ton of enemies here, so reasonable to do. But once you get past the Glassworks itself and get to the Catacombs, then that part can go slower. Oh, your party actually talked him down, and now Pseudo's in Magmar. It's certainly interesting. I think if I ran it again, I would allow him to be more redeemable than he is written. I think he could be an interesting character to keep around. Though he is written to die there. Okay. Investigating the catacombs themselves. These are the catacombs of Wrath beneath the Glassworks. Your party will basically find out about these while they're kind of encountering Pseudo. There's a lot of optional fights here that don't really have a lot of story significance to them. There's Corvus, the goblin hero, or former goblin hero, who's been modified with evil magics and flesh warping. There's the zombies in the cages. There's the random Vargoyles. None of them really matter that much. The main character of import here is Aurelium. She is fucking dangerous. Be careful with her. Especially if you're playing in first edition, she is known to be a party killer sometimes if you play her too optimally. I try to play her less than optimal just because she's got an annoying tool set for what the characters probably have at this level, which is like level 2 or 3-ish. She's got flying and she's got invisibility, both of which are incredibly annoying for if you've got a melee character in the party, for instance. You can kind of set Sin Spawn around her to give the melee character something to do, but if you just have her be invisible the whole fight, I mean, I having been someone who has recently used invisible characters for an entire fight. Yes, Aurelium is the Quasit, by the way. Thank you, Ida, for asking. You don't want to overuse invisible characters too much. Maybe take advantage of her shapeshifting instead. Maybe do a couple other things. But yeah. This is also, again, the first encounter that the party has with Thessalonian ruins. Should they have questions about the stuff that's going on here, you can direct them to Broderick Quink, who I think technically doesn't show up until later chapters as like a important character to interact with, but it's good to get that interaction in early so they start learning about Thassalon a little bit. Because Thassalon and the Runelords are going to be a big part of the story to come. And then, there's a section here, B10, if you look on the map. Those are stairs that go down to the part of the catacombs that the party will be going into in Book 5. Make sure that those seem like so incredibly thoroughly blocked that there's no way for the party to get through them in a reasonable amount of time. Make it seem like it's going to take like weeks or months to excavate that, basically. So even if the party is very interested in going down there, don't make them so interested that they're going to try to go right away. This whole thing is just supposed to be kind of a hint, a teaser for something that's coming up later. This is also a good section that Lamashtu lore starts showing up. Lamashtu's a weird case in this adventure where she's really kind of important early on. I think a lot of parties start to think that she is maybe somehow behind all this. But really she's just kind of like a proxy god. Like she's like an adjacent god that some Thessalonians kind of worship, but she's not, like, I don't think Karzug really worships her. I don't even know if she had a temple in Zin Shalast, really. It's more of the Lamias that have some stuff going on with Lamashtu. I guess Lamashtu must have had some kind of connection to Alasnus, I suppose, given that these are the Catacombs of Wrath. But yeah, be a little bit careful. She kind of ends up being a little bit of a red herring god here, that she's not directly responsible for the major events in the story. She's just kind of incidental. Okay, that's Thistletop. That was, yes, the I talked about... I had a note here about blocking the path for Glass and Wrath. I think I basically already said that. After the party is done investigating the catacombs, then have Shalelu come back and give the all clear to, like, hey, we found out that they're all gathering at Thistletop. I believe Pseudo's notes also say a bunch of stuff about Thistletop, so they're able to put all these together. This is probably enough time, or enough of a chance for them to now want to go. But dealing with Aurelium should kind of be the end of what's going on here, once they've kind of cleared out the catacombs and made them safe. Thistletop, the final part of this book. First off, you should sort of know Nualia's gang and how they are going to interact with the world and each other. Nualia herself, I like to make her a war priest or a champion. I forget what I actually ended up doing in our most recent run, but I think war priest and champion are both reasonable. I think I might have made her kind of a hybrid. I gave her a couple focus spells. I don't know if I actually ended up using any of them, but I think that's kind of the right way to go with her. I think the book writes her as like a fighter or something with like some weird Lamash, some 1E stuff. She was a champion, you think. She kept trying to do big old swings. Yeah, that sounds about right. She might have been champion with some fightery stuff stapled on. Tsuto, note that he's in some kind of weird love polygon between, I think he loves Nualia, or he's in love with Nualia, Lyri's in love with him, and I think Oryx's in love with Lyri, unless I'm mistaken. I might be mistaken on that last one. Lyri, interesting character. She's got a cool design. She's written as being really, really malicious by default. She's got cool art. And she's not very important in the long scheme of the adventure. I think it's fine for you to just roleplay her however you feel like. I like to play her a little bit more as misguided and kind of here more because she wants to do research than because she's necessarily like heinously evil. In my first group, I believe Auric and Lyri survived this encounter in Thistletop to come back later and help out the party near the end. That's a totally perfectly reasonable thing to do. Auric Van Kaskerkin, he's kind of a weird meta meme. There's a bunch of Van Kaskerkins across all of the Paizo adventure paths that show up, and they're just a weird family. I don't exactly know what the deal is with them currently. I've not looked super in-depth into it. I wrote, nah, I'm out here, because I like to play Auric as just... It's very funny that he just sees the party and is like, nah, fuck this. The party usually gets a kick out of it. It's just a very amusing role-play encounter. You can bring Auric back later to interact with the party, either in town, here at Sandpoint, or in Magnamar, or in Riddleport, if you choose to go there. I think it's just amusing. You don't really... There's a bunch of fights here already, so it's not like you need another one to be forced in. I think I must have gotten that idea from the adventure path itself. I don't know if he actually... I don't think he's written... I definitely think he's not written to fight to the death. He's the least into this of all of Nualia's companions. Brithasmus, who gives a shit about Brithasmus? He's here. He's just kind of like a mini-boss character. There's not much important about him going on. Play him however you want. He's just gonna die. Rip Nugget really wishes that he was part of the team. He's got this infatuation with Nualia as well. He's kind of like been taken in by her and is like very obsessed with like looking cool to her. This created some tension between him and Gogmert. So you can play up that kind of tension between the two of them, and use Nualia's influence over Rip Nugget as like a big tension point with the goblins themselves. I think that's fun to do. But otherwise, Rip Nugget, also not very important. Do whatever you want with him. The Brithasmus fight is where I learned about item hardness. Ah, yes. I did try to have fun with the Brithasmus fight. I made it a little bit NSFW, but what can you say? Traveling to Thistletop. This is a good chance to try out stuff like survival skills. Shalelu is a good companion for this part if you need her. Your party might not want her around, or might not necessarily need her. You could also have Shalelu come in as backup. I think both times I've had to have Shalelu and Ameko show up as backup to the party when they were in trouble in the actual during the Thistletop raid. But it's up to you. I think they're both useful companions here, should you need them. I've come to just learn to avoid random encounters in APs. There's enough encounters already. Trust me, there are more encounters than you could ever possibly need. You do not need random encounters. Yes, I know they have the random encounter tables. Yes, I know those look like interesting encounters. Do not run them. You do not need to run them. Maybe one or two, I think, are fine as kind of set piece encounters. It's also fine to just have, you don't have to have the encounter be a full fight. Sometimes I like to roll the encounters just to see, like, okay, like I pre-roll encounters and then like just have the party see the creature that day. And I can say, like, on this day of travel, you witness an owlbear at a, oh shoot, owlbears are probably gone. You witness a goblin and a goblin dog at a stream. And that can be just kind of like they're at a stream, they're drinking some water, they walk away. The party doesn't have to interact with that or fight them. It's stuff that can make your world feel more full and have some of that random encounter flair without actually being random encounters. Avoid ambushes. I just don't like running ambushes anymore. I do them sometimes, but I prefer the party feel like they've got a fair shot and aren't getting surprised all the time. If you start ambushing your party a lot, I think you make them very paranoid, and then you end up with lots of really wacky shit, like parties obsessing over casting alarm 500 times and arranging a fortress anytime they sleep. So go easy on it. Don't go too crazy. This is also a good chance to introduce, or like kind of note a lot of random goblin activity, sort of play up the fact that the goblin armies are kind of coalescing and unifying for some reason. And that should be a very strange thing. Especially if Shalelu's around, she should keep mentioning how strange this is, that the goblins are unifying. Okay. Infiltrating the actual fortress. Though it is a bunch of encounters as listed, I think this is actually a really good point to do a lot of RPing. The goblins that are outside the fortress do not necessarily need to be super gung-ho about Rip Duggett's plan or Nualia's plan. They are largely clueless to what's going on or why anything is going on. So yeah, just have fun with them, especially if you've got goblin PCs or if you've got players who just have affinities for goblins. Every party loves to capture their first goblin pet. It's just a thing across all tabletop games. If the party wants to make connections with goblins, let them. It's fine. It's fun. It's funny. Enjoy it. Yeah, you can have the goblins be from different tribes. I think there's a little bit of info on the different tribes. There might be more info on the various goblin tribes in some other resources, but they're very, very light. You can probably make up a lot as you wish. The Gogmert is in the sort of outer section. You can play up his distaste for or disillusionment with where Rip Nugget is currently taking the tribe. I think that's what I ended up doing in third action, and the party ended up taking to Gogmert and helping him out. You can also use this time to bring up their reverence for the strange being that lives under under Thistletop, which I don't even know if they or if they know the name Nulfeshnikor. But certainly you can have some mention of Nulfeshnikor here as like a bit of an ominous foreshadowing. Mark Cross says that his party RP'd their way through the outside goblins, and yeah, I agree. That's totally a reasonable way to do it. Yeah, there's no reason why you have to fight them on the outside. Just note, once you get to that bridge that connects Thistletop to the land, I don't know what it is about this location, but parties fucking love to burn this bridge, to take the bridge down, to try to burn the fortress, which is made conveniently out of wood. I think last time I might have changed it to be made of stone, but things can just kind of go off the rails here if you're not too careful. I think the first time the party triggered like every single alarm possible and had goblins just running at them. Yeah, be careful. Most parties are probably not going to take this super stealthily, so just try not to overwhelm your party with goblin reinforcements. And also, I guess if they do try to do things like burn the bridge or cut down the bridge or whatever, you can make it a little bit more difficult than they might expect. Say if they try to set the bridge on fire, maybe make it take a long time. Make it a bit windy. Keeps putting out the fires they set. Or make water splash up onto the bridge. There's things you can do. Yeah, I don't know. It can get a little bit weird sometimes, because the island is kind of separate from everything else. Sometimes parties think they can basically kind of flush out or try to out survive the goblins. But I don't know. That kind of play gets really boring. Don't try not to run it as a siege. Yeah, as Joey says. Yeah. That's kind of my broad recommendations there. I don't have good ways to stop the party here. It really depends on what your party tries to do. If they go for a relatively straightforward incursion, that's probably the best that you can hope for. Okay. I guess also worth noting, top floors of Thistletop doesn't actually matter a whole lot for the story. You can kind of do whatever you want with Rip Nugget and the other goblins. They don't all need to die. The party can also just sneak down to the lower floors to try and take out Nualia, which I think is sort of what happened with the party. Or did they fight Rip Nugget? No, I think they fought Rip Nugget. I believe they killed him. Or at least overthrew him last time. Okay, so the B1F. They killed him, Joey? Yes, okay, they did kill him. Okay, so the first dungeon floor of Thistletop, yes, Mark Cross, this is a lot of doors. Doors. There's some more Lamashtu stuff here. Again, great opportunity for more Lamashtu lore if you've got it. I think this is also a good place where you can insert some more connections to the bigger plot. I thought of this while making the slides, but I feel like you could put a messenger from the Brothers of the Seven, the Skinsaw cult. Maybe have a messenger here who's like trying to liaise with Nualia, but maybe hasn't been granted audience yet, and he could have like a letter from Zanisha on him. So like he maybe fights the party fights him in one of the rooms. They pull the letter off of him, see that there's maybe some kind of request for a meeting with the Brothers of the Seven. That could be kind of an interesting tie-in. This is also an interesting chance to throw in some Lisala and Peacock God references. Again, I don't really remember if Karzug did any following of Lamashtu, so it's sort of weird for a Lamashtu temple to be here, aside from the goblins putting one here. There could be some remnants left over of a Lisala temple or a Peacock God temple here. And you don't even have to explain what those are. You can just be like, oh, look, it's a weird carving of a snake lady. And I think that could go... It's just a cool little connection later on. If the party obsesses over it and then eventually finds out what this is way down the road. Feels like cool foreshadowing, right? Make sure that the party can secure a safe space in one of these rooms for resting if they need to. They're probably going to have to do a lot of encounters here. It's okay if they rest. You don't have to have the entire dungeon collapse on them. Especially once they go underground, I think the goblins upstairs don't really need to know about what's going down below. And I think as written, they say they're all scared of Nualia, so they're not inclined to go downstairs. So try to avoid encounter spillover in this section generally. I think all the encounters are nicely spaced anyway, but the quality, like the power level of the individual encounters here is a bit stronger. So if you have, like, encountering Bruthasmus causes Leary and Oric to show up, that might be a bit too much for a party. Depending on what level you make the creatures at. I didn't want to get into specific creature construction here because you can kind of do whatever, and I don't actually have my original Roll20 stat sheets for these guys, but yeah, it varies. But just be careful about encounter overflow here. It's more okay to do encounter overflow later on when the party's higher level, has more tools to escape, has more tools to deal with mass creatures, and the creatures were generally weaker than the party. Okay, and then finally, second floor of the dungeon. This is the party's introduction to Karzug. You encounter some statues of Karzug. There's a Karzug glaive trap here. Watch out, that glaive trap with the Nualia fight next door can be pretty deadly. It almost killed some people on our own show. The entrance and sort of procedure to get to Malfeshna Core is a bit surprising, especially if the players didn't happen to see some of the other Malfeshna Core hints that there was such a creature here. He's not really set up as he's the final boss of this book, even though it seems like it should be Nualia. He is much stronger, much deadlier, especially if you just run him as fuck, what kind of creature is he? I'm blanking on the creature type. Someone will probably tell me. But whatever the... Barghest, with a B. Yeah, he's scary. I think I should have killed the party here, or I think some party members probably should have died in this episode when it happened. I believe this was when I had Shalelu and Ameko show up. Yeah, they all should have died. No, there were no such warnings about opening the door, Adam. That's why I'm saying now. This is a learning that I've gained. I think there's some amount of spookiness about the door to Malfeshna Core, but I think you could probably at least give the party some stronger bad vibes that what they're about to open is a boss, because otherwise it's not really clear. There's basically the Karzug image behind them that's speaking in Thessalonian. I forget what the other chamber is that's near them, E9 there on the map. But it kind of is just a surprise encounter. So pretty spooky. Yes, Cap, I think your group also got saved by Ameko and Shalelu. I think in a different spot in the same place, but and that was in first edition, so yeah. Encounters, scary. Very, very scary. It probably should have been a team wipe. I think I felt bad about it. I believe that's the only time, one of the only 2 times that I avoided killing the party. The other time was me accidentally killing Phelan near the end. Spoilers. With Phantasmal Killer. But yeah, aside from that, there's a couple other encounters here. Not very important. There's the giant crab in the water. That water is just an alternate entrance if your party tries to do some swimming. I have never seen anybody try to swim into Thistletop. You could, but I don't know. I don't really think anybody would try that. And then the shadow fight, which is just kind of random. I don't really remember what the lore reason was for the shadow to be there. It's kind of just filler, so I think both of those fights, you could cut them if you want. Nothing of interest is really lost by cutting them. The shadow fight seemed thrown in. Yeah, basically. I can't even remember who the shadow, what if it gave a reason for why the shadow was there. Normally they do, so I'm probably wrong, but yeah, it has no greater significance, basically. The important things to sort of reveal here are that there is some guy that Karzug exists, to sort of see and hear him talking but not understand what he's saying, and yeah, to not really fully understand what this place has to do with the greater picture. Yeah, the shadows are just an EXP fight. Yep. There are, as you run in APs, you'll see a lot of fights that are mostly just there to fill an EXP limit. I tend to run these games as something akin to Milestone anyways, so you can cut the fights that are just there for filler, and you'll be mostly fine. And then the last bit of this is just returning home. The heroes are now, I think they're called Heroes of Sandpoint earlier, but now is when they're kind of officially the Heroes of Sandpoint. They've stopped this goblin invasion. You should make sure that all of the major players in the town, like Mayor Deverin and Sheriff Hemlock, and Father Xantus, are all extremely grateful. This is where you can give your party some weeks of downtime if you're playing 2nd edition. Let them work some jobs, let them earn some money, let them do some shopping, some retraining. This is a good spot to, if you want to give out free retraining, I think this is an okay spot to do it. I like to do it. It's a reasonable spot if you're like kind of in between books, especially if this is, say, like a group's first time to play. They might want to change some things about their builds after they've seen things go right or wrong. Can't hurt. Yeah, what else? This is also a good time for just some mundane RP while things are relatively chill. You kind of squeeze in any further plot beats you want with other people in the town. And this is where you should start having whoever you picked as the obsession for Aldern, assuming they're still alive at this point. They might not be. Whoever you picked as Aldern's obsession should start losing things. And just day by day, you should sort of, they wake up and their window is open in the inn, or a couple random, meaningless items like soap and things are missing from their inventory. And mention it to them so that they know that such a thing has happened. And that's all going to set you up for what will be Book 2, the Skinsaw Murders, which is all about Aldern to start with, and then later Zanisha and her crew in Magnamar. So this is kind of your last chance to sort of hang out around Sandpoint before things start to get real again. Do some fun, chill stuff. You can skip through this section if you want, or it's not really a section, there's nothing really here. It's just your chance to do random things. What happens if Aldern has gotten killed off here? That is a very common Reddit question and Paizo forum question. I've seen this asked so many times. My advice, if Aldern got killed prior to this, is he's going to become a ghoul. He could have already been infected with ghoul fever prior to the start of the adventure. It's sort of unclear exactly when that happens. Aldern's entire timeline is left really, really vague. So I think it's okay to have him, if he dies prior to this, you can just have his body disappear before he gets buried. He just rises as a ghoul and just stays obsessed with the PC that he's obsessed with. I think that's probably the most straightforward way to do it. I prefer not having him dead yet, because then you can have him interact with the party a little bit more in town in the earlier parts of this book, as he's just around town. And eventually you want to have him leave town, so that way he's not seen as a suspect in the murders that are coming up. But yeah, I think that's all of it. That is all the notes I have on Burnt Offerings. A fun little book, a great introduction to the adventure path. You can also run this adventure solo, I think. The ties to Karzook aren't really there yet. I think I've seen some groups run this as just kind of an introduction to Sandpoint, and then you can kind of kick off a custom campaign from here, or just keep running stuff in and around Sandpoint. There's a lot of stuff you can do here. I think it's a good intro to sort of the world and the setting. You stay kind of isolated to Varizia. In general, I like this book a lot. I think it's pretty well crafted. There's obvious filler thrown in various spots, but yeah, I think it's one of the stronger books as a whole. Okay. I think that's all of my talking. If anybody has any additional questions, I suppose I can throw in some answers to those, but I think that's all I've got as far as like pre-prepared commentary. And if there's no immediate questions, then I suppose I can go and end the recording. So thank you everybody who came out to hang out. Yes, brought to you by Hint. Not actually brought to you by Hint. I just like Hint. What am I drinking today? It's pineapple. It's very good. I like it. What is the water? Yeah, it's Hint water. What is the water in the Catacombs of Wrath? Oh. I think it's just unholy water. We're talking about the gross water, right? I believe... Let me go back to the slides. I believe Asher got the water from B12, which I think was some kind of... I believe it's like an altar to Lamashtu, and I believe it had been filled with unholy water. Or it was just very foul, like dank water that had been there for a very long time, because no one was really maintaining the altar until very recently, when Aurelium came back, because she is actually... Aurelium is supposed to be kind of like an emissary of Lamashtu, because the Scribbler is also like an adherent of Lamashtu, and he became I think he's actually a champion of Lamashtu, basically. The water can mutate you, I believe. Oh, yes, you're right, actually. The water does have some... I think that's what happens to the goblin hero, Corvus, in B9. I believe he gets all fucked up and mutated. I didn't include a picture of him in my little slideshow, but let me see if I can find what he looked like as a reminder. Where are you, little Corvus? There's Suto's Nakey pictures of Nualia. Here we go. Yeah, here's what happened to Corvus. He got like a hunchback and grew an extra arm. Yeah, I think he has exactly 3 arms. It's possible that that's what happened to him. Yes, the basin is filled with what appears to be filthy water. Oh, right, the water is actually waters of Lamashtu. Drinking this vile fluid, yep, is how Corvus became what he is, the mutant that he is today. I can read. I read words. So yes, it was some waters of Lamashtu, which was a first edition item. I don't remember the exact details of how that worked, but I would have had to look it up if Asher had ever done so, or ever tried to drink it. If Asher got a 3rd arm, would I have let him wield a crossbow and bow without dual wield penalty? There's no dual wield penalty in Pathfinder, or in 2E at least. They can dual wield without any problems. Oh my god, I was please keep it a secret. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, what did I miss here? My main recollections are the time Gogmert we made Gogmert the new Goblin King, getting smoked instantly by Malfeshnakor. Make it cool. Making Gogmert the Goblin King was quite funny. I was not expecting you guys to go that route, but it was a fun consequence of Asher being very pro-Goblin in the adventure. I enjoyed that angle. I feel like Gogmert as written is mostly just written to die, so it was amusing to adjust it for that. And yeah, Mako and Shalelu saving you guys is not uncommon for me to have done, and it was very fun. I like them. I wish I had, if I have any regrets about this AP and like how I ran it, I wish I had used a Mako more and better. I had difficulty finding my voice with her, with a Mako this time for some reason. I don't know why. Just something I just felt like I couldn't RP her very well. And I just happened to keep her out of a couple of different events where I normally would have had her involved more. But it's okay. You still got, Asher still got a lot of encounters with Shalelu instead. I guess I didn't talk about it, but this is obviously this adventure, or like this part of the adventure is where you can start, obviously this is the beginning, start incorporating your characters' backstories into the campaign world. I think I didn't really have the party, I think both times I played this, I didn't really have the party give me backstories up front, or like strong backstories up front. So I just kind of didn't worry about the backstory a whole lot here. And we kind of built some of that as we went along. Some of us did anyway. Yes, Will gave me a detailed backstory. I feel like I could have used the backstories more and better. But I personally just didn't do that. I started using it more in book 2 and through the remainders of the books, but I think I probably could have integrated them more closely early on. It's helpful if the oh yeah, I did bring up Gun's backstory, I think, when sorry, yes, that was a lie. That was a falsehood. The party did give me some amount of backstories that I did mention a little bit. I think I mentioned Asher's backstory the least at the start. And it wasn't until later that we added a lot more details to some of the backstories to kind of fill some things in. And I mostly just connected the backstories that were given to events that already kind of were in motion or were part of the AP already. Which is a reasonable way of doing it. But yeah, I feel like I could have done that better. That's the thing to learn from me. Think about your party's backstories from the start. Shar says, I think I only gave Asher's backstory a bit mid-book when you gave that questionnaire. Oh yes, I did do a questionnaire at some point. Thank you for the notes and rundown. Yep, I hope this was enjoyable. I plan to do a similar overview for book 2 next week. It won't have that beginning bit where I talk about just generally running APs. Maybe I'll do book 2 and book 3 next week. I don't know. I'll see how long my notes end up being. But yeah, it was fun. Yeah, tune in next week, I suppose. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also watch us live whenever I happen to go live, which is probably around somewhere in the 7 to 8 range. Please have detailed pictures of the Grawl family next week. I don't remember if there are that many detailed pictures. I think there's a picture of Mammy Grawl, and there might have been pictures of the sons. I don't remember. I think it's just face shots, though. But in any case, I'll have to draw some fan art for you or get it commissioned. Joey sucks. But in any case, see y'all next week. I shall end here. Goodbye.